Maybe his mama.
Is she coming up?
Yeah, she usually talks with us once a week.
Okay.
Let me ask if there are questions from last week. Are you ready for me yet? Is it streaming?
It's streaming.
Okay, this has been, for me, a week of, what's a good word for it? Of manifestations of things that we have talked about, things that I've seen. Let me give you a couple examples of this week with me. Remember when I said that the school shooting thing felt different?
Mm-hmm.
That it didn't feel like, good morning.
Good morning.
It didn't feel like it was something that was going to end. You know,
Okay.
it felt like different to me, that it was not going to peter out the way other things did. And it hasn't, and it won't. The other thing is that before I even saw the movie Black Panther, I felt and was saying that this is different. It feels like things are changing after having seen it. I'm more adamant about it in that we, in terms of, when I say we, I'm talking about Africans in particular, are beginning to see some of the things we talked about in terms of we were brought here to bring balance. And if you really think about what one of the portions of the storyline, it was about, at the end, bringing balance. But in the beginning, staying away from it because you did not want to feel like you're conquering something or become a part of the mess. So you stay in Africa until they bring you in. You're forced to deal with it. So also I feel like the movie itself, the only thing that was fictitious about that movie is the costume that the leading character wore.
Well, you know I haven't seen it yet.
And you in trouble then.
Yeah, because you're telling it.
Not yet. No, that's nothing what I said.
Oh, okay.
I had planned to relate it to the things that we have talked about because it depicts. Who in here has seen it? Who on the phone has seen it?
Yeah, James, I have.
Okay, that's true. Levon. Anyone else? Okay.
Go ahead.
Regardless of what I say,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's going to it'll be new to you, I promise you, the way it's presented.
Well, I heard on Friday on that NPR program they were talking about it, and this psychologist woman was saying, at the end when the villain dies, she was saying she thought he should have lived because then they could get together and do whatever. But I'm like, no.
Well, that was a European thought. That was her conclusion.
This is the first time they've ever had a character who was compassionate, emotional, not afraid to show it, and who realized that he needed to be that way. But I thought of it as the archetype of that other guy, the villain guy, who only knew inner city whatever, and anger, and I thought he had to die off.
I saw that as being indicative of that segment of us in the late 60s, early 70s,
Mm-hmm.
who felt like we needed to change the system by force.
By force and
And
violence.
it had to die. And with it dying out, we did not lose sight of our ancestors and what happened to them. And we preferred death over backing down from changing the system. And that is obvious when you look at the things we did in the face of death. So I saw that dying out. However, I also saw that the other part of it was indicative of a manifestation of how change comes. And I also saw, especially after the credit, I saw the end being, regardless of how productive and how much we're capable of bringing balance, is going to be resisted based on racism. And it says to me that we are in the last throes of racism. And it also says to me that the survival of humanity has a vested interest in the direction that we take. I do believe that what has taken place is we have been able, through our understandings and reading the signs of the times, we have been able to move the whole of humanity into a parallel universe, a place where there is a greater opportunity for balance, peace, love, and kindness than the world has ever known or even expected, because of how things are transpiring. I believe that the children or the young people, of course, and they shall be led by a child, says the scriptures. I believe that the young people from Florida are very, very necessary in what they're doing, because they are changing the course of a nation. The love affair with the gun is the foundation for everything that this country has created wrong. All the ills of the world that this country has brought to bear came because of a gun. And that love affair has to end. Do I think that it's going to end overnight? It is very possible, because everything is possible with the Creator. I also see in this the children of young people from Florida, the women who marching in the streets, the people who are pushing, especially white men, who are pushing for the vote. I see that Caucasians have learned from the adults in the room. We have been the adults in the room. We went through demonstrations, we went to push for vote. All the things that they are doing, we have done it before. And the ones who actually fomented some semblance of change from the 60s was not Martin Luther King. It was those who they didn't want to deal with. The young people who presented a core of anything, any means necessary, are the ones they didn't want to deal with. And they were pushed to deal with King, not because they wanted to, but because they didn't want the alternative. And I think that these young people are representative of that. We, as I said, are the children in the room. And the pattern that was laid, the adults in the room, and the pattern that was laid, they are picking up on it, and they see that it's working. However, I think that we had to do it on the basis of quote unquote civil rights when it was intended by the Creator for it to be simply a pattern for what was to come. And what they are doing now, they meaning the children in the room, what they are doing is they are maturing. And as they mature, the balance will be present. Because the maturity of it is recognizing that you cannot depend on Republicans or Democrats. You cannot depend on older people who are set in their ways. Balance comes from recognizing that people are people regardless of race, regardless of socioeconomics. It does not matter. People are people. I also see representative in their, even though a lot of their parents were voted for Trump, their children are not biting their tongue when it comes to his ignorance. We are looking at all these developments in that particular case with Manafort and Rick Gates and the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to see what's happening here. What's being shown here is that the entire, all of Europe is corrupt. All of Europe is corrupt. And it's being shown through the manipulation. For example, Manafort paying European leaders to support the Ukraine in taking Crimea. The corruption in how money is used to control the world and to change systems and governments, and how in every European nation, most prominent in Hungary, in every European nation, there is a strong push for nationalism, which is another word for racism. Anti-immigration is another word for racism. And those things are rearing their head worldwide. And there is a connection between all of them throughout Europe as well as this country. And the leadership of it is this country. So when the head of the snake is severed, the rest of the body may wiggle, but it dies. And this is the head of the snake. There is no doubt in my mind that the most corrupt nation on this earth and the nation that is more corrupt than any other nation ever existed is America. There's no doubt in my mind about it. There's no doubt in my mind that when we transcend our ambitious desires for those things that money can buy, then we would have transitioned our material humanness and recognized and embraced the spiritual essence of our being in both worlds. So, and I think a strong depiction of that is Black Panther. I think it's a very strong depiction of that. So, am I going to see it again? Yes. I think I missed more than I saw, even though I saw a lot. I am going to see it again. One of the things that European or Caucasians are saying, the reason they're giving for it being racist is when the CIA do refer to as a colonialist, a colonizer, when he was called a colonizer.
Yeah.
That one word spoke volumes. When he was called a colonizer, you could write a book about that. Because it spoke to everything that America and Europe has done to people of color. It spoke to everything. I think that the villain's daddy was indicative of those, or representative of those in the midst of the people who are to bring balance. I think that he is representative of the African overseer on the plantation. By virtue of him selling the weapons, buying into a system that is set on, if not destroying, minimizing his existence. And the death of him says to me that this type of attitude is dying, if not dead, and the result of that attitude is the son who becomes a villain. And again, I believe it was depicted, represented by the violent nature that a lot of us thought would be necessary in order to change the system. One of the things that spoke to me very, very deeply is one of the things that we talked about. We talked a lot about the restoration of the female. And the restoration of the female has nothing to do with allowing someone to do anything. It's about just getting out of the way and letting it be what it is. And the fact that the females were protective of the males says to me that the restoration is present. So, and I can go on and on and on. About the villain was trained by the system to do what? To overthrow governments, to destroy governmental interests, especially in third world countries. That's what they depicted as third world countries. And I think that the metal that they were talking about, I think is speaking to everything that was stolen and is being stolen from Africa. Especially bauxite, and the metal that goes into the making of cell phones. Without it, there wouldn't be a cell phone. I think it speaks to that more than a nation that's hidden from the world in terms of a physical nation. I believe it's a spiritual nation that the world is about to see. And that spiritual nation that the world is about to see is representative of Jesus saying, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. That means superior. It means leadership. And leading the whole of humanity out of the darkness that has been so pervasive because of the gun itself. Has been so pervasive because people have been placed into categories based upon the color of their skin. And race is nothing but categories. When we say African race, that's a category. When we say Indian race, that's a category. And I'm speaking of the Indians from India. That's a category. I think it's a misnomer to say Native Americans because they're not Native Americans. Because they were here before America was, so they're not Native Americans. They're indigenous people. So that's, I think it's a better characterization of it. And I see that is going to take the ones who have been kept in bondage, it's going to take them to bringing in to this characterization of people and the bondage that has been imposed by people based upon race and economics. So, are there any questions or comments on what?
Well,
about.
I was thinking also about the two things. Back to where you're talking about the children, and you know, the Bible talks about a child shall lead them, kind of issue.
Mhm.
Don't have all of the cultural biases and all that other stuff. Just looks at what is and says this is wrong. And then those children are connected to parents, as you said, who, whatever their thought processes, when it comes to their children, they're going to begin to listen to what they're saying about the truth of what they're saying. Then the second comment I have relates to the other guy who lived in the mountains.
Yeah.
And the final, I thought about prodigal son in a sense, but not appreciating what you have available to you and isolating yourself, but the final coming together.
And I see them representing, and I say this only for context, not because of what it is, but for context. I see them being represented in this culture of this nation by those who are so deeply in Trump's camp until they can't see the forest for the trees. And I'm talking about Africans in Trump's camp. And when I say Africans, I am referencing the people of color in this country as well as other Africans. Because though we are not in Africa, Africa is in us. So no matter what you call yourself, Africa is in, that's your origin, Africa, period.
That's everybody's origin.
Absolutely. And it's funny that the ones who were brought from Africa does not want to be referenced as an African. However, all Caucasian can come from South Africa, and he says he's an African simply because he was born there. I think that our origins, our nature, our attitudes, our essence transcends a geographical birthplace. Our origin, our essence is based upon our spiritual birthplace, who we are. And that's the nature of our being. The guys in the mountains left, but in the end, they came back. And in coming back, they changed the tide. So it's extremely also important to me as to how the king respected his quote-unquote girlfriend's wishes. He could have ordered her to come back by virtue of his authority, but he chose not to. He left it up to her as to whether or not she was going to come back. I think that was extremely important, and keep in mind, I'm not a movie person at all. In the last 122 years, I've been to see two movies, James Brown and Black Panther.
Big
And
difference.
the lead actor, both of them was from Anderson. And again, that's the South Carolina connection. All the ugly stuff that came out of South Carolina, that's her friend in there.
You didn't go see that one about the tall purple people?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you talking about
What do they call it?
the Avatar?
Yeah.
I saw that. That was 200 years ago.
Oh, that wasn't in the last 120. Okay.
Also, the writer of who wrote the story of Black Panther, both of them teach at USC. I'm not USC, South Carolina State.
Okay.
Really? I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that.
The writers of
The original.
the writers of Black Panther, the storyline, are two gentlemen, two black men, yes, are from South Carolina State.
So-
They teach at South Carolina State.
Now, what is all of this saying?
Wow.
The most ruthless of racism came out of South Carolina, to the extent that people came to South Carolina to learn how to break their slaves, to learn how to keep black folk in their place. People came from South Africa to learn how South Carolina was keeping their colors in place, in their place. So all this dirt and ugliness came out of South Carolina. So it's up to South Carolinians to make it right, because that's the foundation of it. And it does not surprise me that here we are in South Carolina being able to read the signs of the times, but not only that, having spoken these things that were to come long before they manifested. Long before they manifested. So this South Carolina connection is extremely important. The roots of it is South Carolina. So it is also no coincidence that the major port for the importation of Africans to be enslaved was South Carolina. It's no coincidence that South Carolina led the secession movement. It's no coincidence that right after the end of Reconstruction, South Carolina codified the Black Codes. There's no coincidence. So all of these things are have their origin in South Carolina. So the loving kindness must also have its origin in South Carolina. And I do believe that one of the reasons I was forced to go to school someplace else other than USC in the beginning was because I needed to be exposed to Pharaoh's system and the rebellious nature of those who were opposed to Pharaoh's system. The thing that pushed me to go to another school or to leave South Carolina to go to school was not a desire to leave, because I had opportunities prior to, in terms of scholarships, to go other places. I chose to stay in Union. And when this lady of German descent walked into our classroom, Miss Burita, walked into our classroom, and she, after having graded our paper, the English teacher, if I had, she would say, I'm grading on content. That's when I had some errors, grammatical errors or punctuation. When the punctuation was right, she was grading on content. I mean, on the opposite of what I had is what she was grading on. And I went to one of my high school English teachers with one of the papers I had to write, and she corrected it. And when I gave her that paper, when she came back with that paper, she stood in that class and said, I don't pass niggas. And I went to the chancellor about it, and he said, there's nothing I can do. And I had some charged words with him, and all of us, meaning that all of the African students at that school left. All of us went in different places. Lyles went to state, Sandra went to New York, I went to DC. We left behind that statement. So I think it was a forced thing. And here we are, back at the roots of everything that has been ugly. And by virtue of desire, these things are not only being exposed in terms of the ugliness of it all, but it's also being uprooted. And there are new roots that are taking the place of those old roots. And they're being seen through the eyes of change. Florida, no coincidence, because the Underground Railroad went south before it went north. The Underground Railroad started with people getting to Florida, because once enslaved people got to Florida, they were free, because there was a town a town, an African town in Florida, where Jacksonville, or close to where Jacksonville is now. If you made it to that town, you were free.
Is that still part of Mexico then?
Huh?
Florida, was that still part of the Hispanic?
The Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, Florida
Yeah.
was not a state
It was a territory, but it was controlled by the Spanish. And the Spanish made sure that enslaved people were free when they got there. So it's no coincidence to me that because the enslavers forced their way into Florida and changed everything by virtue of wresting Florida from the hands of the Spanish. Now their descendants are the ones who are advocating against the tool that they used to wring Florida from the hands of the Spanish and make sure that it was not a safe haven for those who were escaping slavery. All of these things are pertinent. And again, when I look at the movie, I see the reality of politics as well as the reality of history depicted there. The guy who was who became a Confederate of the villain, he is representative of someone who is hungry for power. His desire was not so much to conquer the world, but his desire was more a hunger for power. He desired power because he had not seen the rest of the world. He had just been abreast of what was happening around him. So anyway, that's where I am with it, and of course,
The burial scenes were sort of significant to me too. They were covered, literally covered.
yes,
And both of the two, but they had insight
mm-hmm.
about themselves, but in spite of that came out with two different views of how they were going to respond to that insight.
You know why? The reason is because the one who was the son of the villain, the villain rather, had no connection and didn't want any connection with the ancestors. The only connection that he even desired was with his daddy, and his intentions were to destroy the person who, or the offspring of the person who killed his daddy. That was his only desire. Therefore, his insight was extremely short-sighted, and he could not see beyond his hatred. But however, the other guy could see the ancestors and saying, why didn't you go further in terms of his daddy?
So he not only was able to communicate, but to say there's much, much more
Yes,
than even you did as my ancestor.
right.
And he was connected all the way back in time. The other two Panthers in the picture, the moment
Yes.
they appeared,
Oh yeah.
that kind of made me realize how linked he was.
But bigger than that, look how linked he was when the second time.
The second time
Yeah,
there was a
when you
whole
saw.
bunch of
Yes.
I thought it was interesting he was buried in snow
Yeah.
the second time, the entire spirit, and healed.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought, that was really
So that's, and also, it also speaks to me that the source of all medicine is Africa. The healing. And you say, what? Oh yeah. Because if you, I don't know, well, let me say this. In Jamestown, Virginia, there's history about the African being the doctor who went about healing people with the herbs from the land, but they could not be called a doctor, neither could they go alone. So he had to take a white person with him, a white male, and the white male learned from him. So there was no white doctor in that sense. In South Carolina, South Carolina was one of the worst states on the face of the earth when it came to females. Because if you look at the history of gynecology, you will find that it started at MUSC. And it was white doctors experimenting on enslaved females without any anesthesia. And I mean doing cut-ins, exploring the vaginal areas, looking if a white woman was having pain in a certain part of her body, they would take a African female and look at that part of her body. And this doctor kept very, very detailed notes. And as a result of that, he was invited to New York, where, if I'm not mistaken, the hospital is now Mount Sinai, is where he worked and perfected the study of gynecology.
What's that movie that Oprah Winfrey did about this black woman who they took her cells?
Oh yeah, Henrietta Lynch. Henrietta, yeah.
Henrietta something or other.
Yeah.
They took her cells and they've been making medicines based
From her
on
cells.
all of that
Yes.
for
And
decades.
now,
And she got no compensation.
look at her. They used her cells, right?
Mhm.
Well, who took the healing from the flower, from the plant, and gave it to the king? A female.
Yeah.
She brought the healing, because without it, it wouldn't have taken place. Up until that point, it was the male priest who was doing the mixing of it. But now it was the female who did it. And it's also important to note that it was the mother who administered it. And the mother was depicted by a person of wisdom, because in the African culture, gray hair represents wisdom. So it's all of these things it's so significant until I'm not even sure that all of these details the writers were aware of all of the details. But
isn't that the case usually when people are inspired from somewhere beyond
Themselves.
themselves?
well, they did the
Like-
research now. They did the research.
I know, but
I think it took them further.
yeah.
Then it stressed them further.
Your richer experience for you when you look at it.
It stressed them further than they had any intention to any idea that they were going.
I didn't even know she had gray hair because she had these beautiful coverings
Until after she administered that medicine, then it showed out. Yeah.
That's the wisdom was hidden until it was needed. And what did the wisdom do? Wisdom gave birth to understanding, to masculine energy. And as a result of that, everything changed. We cannot be selfish and take care of ourselves. We have to save the whole world. And that did not come until after he returned to beginning. And returning to beginning was when he went to the ancestors.
But the feminine energy pushed him to that. What did she say? Oh, when she reminded him, why are we keeping this to ourselves so we can share it with so many, when there's so many others
who heard in action is what she was saying. So that's not even a tenth of what the movie said. And I can't remember dissecting the movie like this since Avatar. And I don't think that Avatar had as many messages as this. I don't think Avatar covered the history of all of our existence in this nation. It dealt with our existence from the beginning to the end. And the end is bringing reconciliation between the whole of humanity. That's the ultimate goal that we've always had, right? Bringing balance is talking about reconciliation between the whole of mankind without these categories that's called race. It just, we are humans, period, who, we are spiritual humans. That's who we are, spiritual humans. I even think the, what we call the supernatural powers of the Panther in terms of the movement was a depiction of spiritual essence, being able to move like the wind. I think that was very, very important.
What you think about the perception that the perception of the outside world that this was a third world country? Because if you remember, before you got into the city proper, the fringes were these people who were people of the land. You know, they
Seen as, yeah,
But yet, but look
the
at
poorest of the poor.
what does it say? Underestimated, undervalued. That's what happened, and that's today.
and they saw what they wanted to see.
Yes. Yeah, and to this day they see what they want to see. To this day, the only thing that they see is urban blight. That's all they see. Urban blight. They don't see that 74% of Africans in this country do not live in poverty. They look at the 26% that they keep in poverty on purpose. That is not what's shown, and the reason there is such a white outcry against the movement is because the truth hurts.
Well, but the other thing is that when you put out stuff like that, truth like that, and I'm all for the God of this world. You put that in jeopardy when you got people's minds shifting because of what some of the.
When LaVon made a statement this morning when I was talking to them, that she and George, that LaVon, tell them what you said about what was it concerning? What was it about? Say what you said again, Bob.
Well, I was thinking about the fact that.
Oh, I know what it was.
Okay.
About them talking about this is a black movement.
There was some people that were saying that they couldn't understand why Black Panther were so proud and wanted to make a black movie, and how would they feel if the whites made a white movie?
Hasn't that been what we've been watching all this time?
All of them were white.
Waiting for that one. Look at Birth of a Nation for Woodrow Wilson, right?
Yeah. Duh.
Yeah.
But
that's what
in
you do when
addition-
you can't think of anything else to say.
But in addition to what LaVon, the point she made, and what they said, is the fact that people who think they're in power now, I mean, this movie has grossed over $500 million. Not only has it got these spiritual underpinnings and threaded throughout it, on top of that, it's grossed that much money from, in terms of its manifestation in the world, in this world. And wow, what if people get hang of the ideas in this movie, number one, and how is it going to hit my pocketbook, number two, if they start saying it more and more and making more movies like that? I mean, it's just.
And it had to make this much money because that's the only thing that
Gets
Caucasians met. You know, that's
I understand.
yeah, that's all.
But I heard this guy say, white guy say, when his child saw the previews, he said, "Dad, we gotta go see this movie." But he said he went to see it first, and he said it's the only movie in a long time where he felt like he could bring his child because there's no profanity, there's no adult situations, you know, that you want to keep your child from seeing. There's no gratuitous violence. It always has a purpose. Yeah. So he said he was happy to bring his child to see this movie.
And you know why I was so happy? Because when I was younger, when I was in college, all we had was Superfly. And Richard Roundtree. What was this? With Richard Roundtree? Shaft. No, we had that's all we and Shaft was based on true story.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that? Because the guy who was the JoJo, they did a story on him. He was walking the streets of New York when we were. So it's based on, of course, the writer took some liberties with it, but it's based on true story. But that's all we had. You know, then we had shut your mouth.
I'm talking about Shaq.
Those stories.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking
produced
about.
Those stories?
Yes. So even and the point of the matter is this, Barbara. Even though they were depicting black people, it was a white movie.
Yeah.
Even when we were in it, it was a white movie. Why? Because the movie, whether it is culturally white or culturally black, is not based upon what you see as much as it's based upon who wrote it. Because that in itself tells us how they look at us then and now, because that has not changed. However, the main thing that has changed is how we look at ourselves.
Bam.
This movie has presented itself in a way that has pushed us or given us the courage to turn the corner.
I saw more balance in this movie between the masculine and feminine energies in many different roles.
Oh yeah.
And it was and everyone knew their strength in their role.
Yes.
There were women who feminine energy represented as protectors. And then you had the king as a nurturer as well as his mom as a nurturer in a sense. I mean, they were, I mean, the role, it was fluid like that. It wasn't labeled and you were in this container and that's where you always stayed kind of stuff.
So now we don't have to try to remember all of that stuff when we do a handshake. I'll bet you just cross you off on your chest. So you have to look at it.
It did get complicated for a while.
Yeah. But Levon, other comments based upon what you saw, what you were talking about, or the movie itself?
The thing that I enjoyed was the scenery and the scenes, how they showed Africa, and then when they went back to the United States or wherever it was, just how dark and just dirty it seemed like. But then scenes in Africa and the richness of it, even when I meant to when the council got together and they met, and how elegant and those rooms were, and then the waterfall scenes. It was just great that this director was able to receive as much money as he did receive to do what he did. And I think the scenes were just, I don't know what the word is for when you use those things, the different scenes, but I just thought the countryside and how they showed it was just magnificent.
Do you guys know that most of that was filmed in South Korea? I thought that was kind of interesting, seeing that we're having this contention with our leaders having such a contention with that country.
And that in itself is being exacerbated all because of the stupidity of Pence. There was a golden opportunity to make contact, and he chose to ignore her. And Pence, being who he is, the closet gay dude, the closet gay dude and halfway closet racist, didn't talk to her for two reasons. Southern Baptist, she is a woman.
Yeah.
And she is of color. And she has told America, go to hell. We don't care what you say there. And her brother has said to America, you must think I'm a fool. I ain't Gaddafi. Gaddafi gave up his weapons and y'all killed her. I ain't the fool. When we get what we get, then we can talk.
And
Why? Because that puts you on parity.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, as angry as they are with Pakistan because of what Pakistan is doing with Afghanistan, you don't see them messing with them because they have nuclear weapons.
Mm.
Guns and money are the only things that the powers of this world respect. Money and guns. And they go hand in hand. They don't even respect Christianity. They don't respect religion. They just use it as a convenience. There's no respect for it at all. The big Christian Pence is respecting what he believes in terms of Christianity, even though it's that Pauline stuff. If he believes what he says, how can he continuously deal with Trump?
Right.
You can't. At some point, you have to have moral values and deep-seated beliefs that you are willing to give up anything for. I believe what I believe, and I'm not willing to compromise.
That's right.
I'm not willing to compromise what I believe. If you don't do that, the question is, what do you really believe? When you look at the kids and you see all of those men with guns who did not go into that school, it's because I'm not a protector. I'm not here to protect you. I'm here for show. Those deputies, I would rather be dead than to have people talking about me being afraid to go into a school where 17 kids plus instructors were killed. I would rather be dead. I would rather go in there and face what I have to face. Now, this is what it says to me. You are no different than you've always been. You were scared of us. That's why you came 100 to 1. You're not who you depict yourself to be. You are more afraid of what you have created than you are anything else. You say that you're the brave dude. You say that you will face any circumstance until it comes to you. Now you're afraid of it. The slave master was more afraid of the enslaved than he was anything. That's one of the reasons that South Carolina made a decision that no more slaves are going to be brought into the state, and they start sending them to Louisiana after the illegal purchase of Louisiana. When the Monroe did that. But anyway, they start sending them to Louisiana because it was Jefferson. It was so many in this country. Yeah, Jefferson. It was so many in the state until they were like, there's no way we could fend off an uprising by these colors. So you're afraid of what you created. That's the thing that speaks to me when I hear the stories about the deputies who were afraid to go into the school.
Were there more than one?
Yes. There were. They found out that
Because
there
they
were.
have the face of the one.
The one was sitting out there.
Yeah.
But they found that there were others who came who didn't go in too. They just stayed out. So
They said 3 more.
so this is the thing that's what this speaks to me. And when I look at the movie again, and I see the guy who stole the weapon from was it white? Wasn't it? The name of the country.
Wakanda.
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 A lot of words. A lot of words. Swahili. I understood a lot of words, and some of them Swahili.
Yeah.
But anyway, Wakanda. When the guy had stolen the weapon from Wakanda, the CIA guy was not. He didn't. When he woke up, he wasn't there. He didn't have a desire to go there to help anyone or to stop the proliferation of that weapon. He went there to bring it to the U.S.
Yeah. Of course.
That's what he went there to do, to bring it to the U.S. But at the end, it appears as though his conscience had been pricked and things had changed because he saw the benefit of what had been developed there and how it could benefit humanity, and as opposed to being converted into a weapon. When you think about it, you remember the weapon that he had.
Looks like a gun.
You didn't see any in Wakanda with the weapon.
Yep.
They did not use that weapon. So what that tells me is you went to China and got some gunpowder. And you converted it into something totally different than what it was intended to be. You went to and got this stuff, this material. Look what you did with it. So if that was a weapon of choice, then all of them would have used it. If you went around here with a spear instead of this,
So this little round ball.
it's just the weapon, yeah. Yeah. So it's just full of nuggets of the reality of this life that has been lived, this life that has been created in this nation. And it also said to me, you should not in any way be ashamed of who you are, neither should you be uncomfortable desiring or reaching out to your ancestors. We do it all the time. We just don't call it ancestors because the evangelicals, the Paulinian Christians, has taught us that that's ancestor worship. When it isn't, it is reaching out to we do it. Have you ever had a message from someone in your family who died? That's an ancestor. So ancestors give directions, and I think we don't. One of the reasons is because we don't understand what this idea of ancestors are from a spiritual perspective. They appear the way that they do because you're familiar with them. However, it is a spiritual message that's being brought to you, and it's being brought from the place where the Creator is. It's being brought from the other world, the spiritual place, where things appear as they need to appear. The leopard in the tree transforms into his daddy. They appear as they need to appear to bring a message. And That is no different than I am. I am what you need me to be when you need me to be. There's no difference in that. See, the self-shame, hopefully, the shroud of self-shame has been removed. And once you indoctrinate a people to the extent that you diminish their capacity for desire to know who they are, then you do not have to put chains on those people physically. It's like the elephant who's chained to the stake. After he's accustomed to it, you can put a thread around his leg and he won't break, he won't move. We've been conditioned we've been conditioned to have a desire to know American history, but not our history. Because if you talk to the average African, they will talk to you about slavery. Because in talking about our history, we have been conditioned to go to slavery and stop. We talk about being enslaved. We talk about how we were freed from slavery. We talk about the civil rights movement, but we don't talk about where we were prior to the kidnappers coming into the camps. We don't talk about that. We'll go to the coast of Africa. We'll go to the slave ship, but we never go beyond the slave ship. And this, I think, encourages that. That was one of the reasons I taught African history in the summer programs that we had, because we desired for the kids to know that your history goes much further than slavery, that you do not have a slave history. You have a history that exceeds any cultural history that you can dream of, because it is we who brought civilization to the world. The Moors brought civilization to the world. I think that was the word that we used last week, civilized the world. And if you are convinced that you are a savage, that you are less than human, that you are like crabs in a barrel, then you don't go to that place beyond that. You don't see that, because now you believe that you are uncivilized. And that was said by Hillary Clinton, by Donald Trump, when they did the 1994 crime bill. They were called barbarians, they were called uncivilized, all kinds of names the kids were called. But when you know who you are, you don't accept that. If we were like crabs in a barrel, where did Black Wall Street come from? If we were people who constantly are putting each other down out of jealousy or whatever, then how did we get to where we are? I can say from from experience that the church, the people in the community, they didn't have money when I was in school, but they would say, here's $5, here's $15. Would it buy a book? No, but it is what they were saying to me. One of the guys in the community where I grew up, he said to me, if anyone messes with you, don't deal with it, come to me, because you got out, you made it. And he wasn't saying that to boost me as much as he was saying, at least somebody got to where they are now, and you are reaching back. Because I've always dealt with the people I grew up with, regardless of what kind of character they presented. It didn't matter. And the person who was saying that to me was somebody who has been in and out of jail more times than I can count. And has a attitude that you don't mess with me, I come off on you. That kind of thing. So I'm saying that if we were like crabs in a barrel, how did we get to where we are? That's something that was sold to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we have repeated so often until the universe had begun to bring it into fruition. That's something we have to move away from. And one of the examples of how we have lifted each other up is when you're talking about the thing that Roosevelt did.
The New Deal.
The New Deal. How it did not include us. How it purposely omitted us. And this is the other thing. White people did not just start using code words. Code words has been in their vernacular forever. Because with the New Deal, they didn't say colors are excluded, did they? They said farmers and domestics. Those are code words for us. Because that's what we were. That's what we were doing, rather, I should say.
That's all we could do.
That's all we, yeah.
We were allowed to.
So that's where we are. I mean, even when in the cotton mills, when black folk worked in the cotton mills, they made a little bit more money and they helped people outside. The man across the street from where I grew up worked in a cotton mill. But guess what he did? He cleaned bathrooms. That's all he could do. Because all the rest of the jobs were for white people. That's where we have come from in terms of this nation. And how we arrived, we have not arrived in terms of society. Because we were not integrated into a society. As I said before, we were integrated into a system, not society. And the system that we were integrated in over the years has given us an attitude of greed. And we have embraced that greed to a great extent. Now that is being changed. The system must be uprooted and replaced with a system that is all-inclusive. We have never, ever been a part of this society. We have always been on the fringes of it. However, we were told that we were integrated into a society, but we were not. We were not even integrated into a culture. We were told that, but we were not. Get an education. You can make it if you get an education. You'll be one of us. You do this, you do that. And here we are. When we start getting the education, now you got loans. All the grants are gone. Now you got loans that go keep you in bondage forever and a day.
Well, and sabotage in public schools, too.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And they're being sabotaged as we speak. So that's where we are. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Well, I was going to say, what I didn't say in the beginning is the king, T'Challa, represented balance. And that's why the other guy, the villain, had to die off. Because he did not represent balance. And it's going to be balance that changes things.
And T'Challa wanted to change things, but the other guy did not want to change the system. He wanted to control it.
Yeah.
And in controlling the system, it would just flip the script. That's all.
I have a question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I got the impression that T'Challa could have healed him, like they healed two others in the show.
I thought he was going to do it.
But did he not do it because he asked his nephew, I guess, or his cousin?
Cousin.
And he had free will. He chose not to want to live in this life. That's kind of what I got from it.
He also chose, T'Challa chose not to heal him. He didn't even offer it.
But that's because he had already his cousin had already decided he didn't want to change. He didn't
He knew
want
he would
to.
not change.
You mean he
He
himself
knew.
knew he would not change?
And when he died, what did he say? Just before he died, bury me in the sea, where my ancestors jumped overboard because they'd rather die than to live in bondage. So what was he saying? I would rather die than live in bondage. There was no depiction of any prisons or anyone being in bondage. None. So what was he in bondage to?
The life
His
he
hatred,
knew?
his hatred, his anger, the system that he hated so much. He was in bondage to that.
But that's all he knew.
That was all he knew, but that was not all he was introduced to. He saw the difference,
Yeah.
but he chose not to. So he was in bondage to himself, his attitude, the things that he hated had him in bondage. I'm going to tell you something else that stood out to me. Did you see his arm with all the
All those little.
Yes.
pocket marks on it?
Yes, that he
Kill-
made,
we
yeah.
kill people.
Mhm.
When he took his shirt off, he saw his whole body, right?
Right.
Up until that point, before he took his shirt off, it was minimal. When he took his shirt off, all he was saying is, I represent a nation who is intent on killing everyone who doesn't agree with it. Because he said he was what? A Navy SEAL. He was
Yeah, that's right.
he worked for CIA.
Yeah.
So
His
that
assassination.
was marks
For every kill.
for every kill that was marked. And with his body having been covered with those, the message being sent was, this is what we do. What I have been taught, as the CIA dude said, to destabilize governments. We go in just before the election
And kill people.
and kill people. We make sure that we get to the person who we want in office. I mean, if you really listen,
So all the more reason why that archetype had to die,
yes,
because he was just a killer, and he wasn't going to change.
I mean, that short statement about destabilizing governments is what the whole book of Overthrow is about. How to destabilize the government. And that's what the CIA does. Destabilize governments. And look how unstable Wakanda became when he became king. Look at the instability there. Even though the other king had gone, he was still creating instability. Why? Because that's what he knows.
Even the guy whose friend was the chief of the women who
Yeah.
were protectorates, started seeing her in a different light, responding to her in a different light, like authoritarian wise, like the new
Mm-hmm.
supposed king. So he began to take on that attribute.
And this is, because you know what else happened? We talk about the suppression of feminine energy. Feminine energy went into seclusion, or it became a refugee. And it was not restored until masculine energy, the balance came back. It became a refugee in another land. And the refugee and the status of females of feminine energy is that of a refugee. And now the thing is no more. This is it. This is it. We are not going to take it anymore. I'll tell you one of the stunning things to me during the course of the week when those young people from Florida were demonstrating. They were never again, right? And then at some point they began saying, "We shall overcome." And that's when it clicked with me that the children are learning from the adults in them. That's when it clicked.
And they told Rubio, he walked in with pants, but he left out naked. I think they told him,
They did.
and
But
they
you know
deserve
what?
it.
I respect him. Because he knew what he was walking into. But the governor said, "I'm coming." Then he said, "No, I ain't going there. I am not going there."
He's just as bad as the guy that didn't go into the deputies when the shooting was occurring. The 3 guys. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, that's where we are. And unless there are questions or comments, I'm done. I did not think that.
James?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to mention one point, like in the movie, where there was, I can't recall his name, that he went against Coachella, and he had to bow down to the woman, in reference to, I guess, like, well, making amends. But that was interesting in terms of, him coming into submission, that he, was wrong, or he needed to correct the wrong. So that was interesting for me to see that, the man, being submissive, I mean, in that sense, in terms of, what is right.
But George, it was more of being respectful after having been disrespectful.
Which one? The right-hand man to T'Challa when he switched sides in the scene where he knelt down before the. I don't want to say it was his girlfriend, but yeah.
Yeah.
The general,
Yes.
Yes, where he knelt before
who was his wife.
his wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that?
Oh, was that his wife?
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought they were just a.
That was his wife, which is talk about Adam,
Okay.
feminine and masculine energy, one. See, the whole idea of feminine masculine energy is not submissiveness, it's respect. It's respect. And the respect he had, now, it wasn't shown physically that he disrespected her. He disrespected the nation. And he bowed to her, not to the king.
Yeah.
Because they had to be restored to that oneness. And notice he didn't kill him. This movie is
Awesome.
No, James Richard.
James Richard on back.
Hey.
If I'm anything, I'm observant. So, George, anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. One other point, James.
See?
When
You
we were
sure
talking
are,
about the ancestors.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought about is when we were in Indianapolis and we went to that museum, and it was a native Indian who said that my spirit will never die and that my spirit will always be in my grandchildren's, children, etc. And so, it's just a blessing, to, be able to know how powerful the spirit is. And even like you say, sometimes we might not have been born in Africa, but Africa is in us.
Yes.
And that's the terminal piece I just wanted to mention.
How many of you been to the African American Museum in D.C.? When you're in the lower floor, right? Don't you feel different when you walk up to Emmett Till or when you walk up to the ship or when you the different things that depict there. Is there a feeling that goes over you?
Yeah.
That's your ancestors' presence. It's like when I went for the 922nd time. Iman and I went through, and when she walked up to the place where the exhibit of Emmett Till is, she says to me, "Daddy, I can't go in there." And she started crying like she had, had been there. And I'm asking her, "Baby, what is it?" She said, "I feel it."
Mm.
She said, I can't do it. And she said that I have seen one of the pictures, some years ago, because we had the Jet magazine. And she said, "I'm having flashes. I can't do it." And she broke down as if, it was right there in front of her, for real, for real. What was she experiencing? The pain that he endured, the suffering that his mama endured, the whole concept of suffering that came as not only as a result of that, but what led up to that. So all of that energy is there. And then when you get to the top floor, you'd be like, "Oh, okay, time to go."
Yeah.
All the entertainment stuff, like, okay, time to go.
It's
And-
almost, I guess, I've not been there yet, but it's almost like you're at the point where, I mean, whoever had this vision of how they designed it, almost like all of the stuff, you can see the distraction, and you don't want to be, because of what you
Yeah.
experienced, you know what all of this is flashiness.
And the whole building itself is depicting a slave ship. The sails on the slave ship. Maybe we need to plan a trip to the museum.
That was good.
I'm serious.
Also, I've said to Richard, when we, like, in West Africa, when you go to one of those islands like Gorée, where they huddle them all before they put them on the slave ship, and the door of no return and all that. We went there one day, and we went down into where they held them before they put them on the ship, and I could just feel their presence there. I mean, it was like I was in the crush, because I could just feel them. And man, I had to get out of there because it was just overwhelming. But yeah, I could feel them.
I experienced that at the slave market in Charleston before they tore it up.
Mhm.
The energy is totally different now.
It is.
But I remember well, not just the first time, but each time I walked through it, I would start at the back of it and walk towards the front. It got to a place where I couldn't do that anymore because it was so overwhelming.
Mm.
I mean, it's like when you walk up to that elevator, you can see them being carried up for the auction.
Yeah.
And standing on the porch of the Confederate Museum and looking down the street, you can see the crowds. It's simply disheartening to think that human beings could be so cruel.
Yeah.
It's disheartening to think that who would think about cutting someone's head off and sitting on the ship as a form of intimidation to the enslaved people who were being brought to the ship? Who?
Barbarian.
I mean, how you think it? What brings you to the point of concocting the things that were done? Tying a person between two horses and tearing them apart, or boiling animal fat and dropping somebody in it and forcing everyone to look at this. Where do these ideas come from? Purposely raping the women in front of their children, in front of their quote-unquote man, because they couldn't be married then, raping her in front of them, stripping her naked in front to do this, and forcing her son to have sex or to have intercourse with her. Where does that come from? This is called the breaking of the female. And to do things like this that when I think about the base nature of humanity, of men, I don't get that far down. I cannot, for the life of me, I guess embody the feeling that will bring you to that place. I just don't get it. I don't get it as a human. But when I look at it from a spiritual perspective, I see that things of that nature forces the one to whom it's happening to do something about it at some point. It pushes you in a corner. But my God, did you have to go this far to be pushed in a corner? I don't understand. And then you tell us there's no such thing as a marriage. And then you tell us you're not married unless you get a piece of paper that we wrote. You tell us that you are not worthy of a last name. You have a first name so that I can distinguish you from the other person and you come when I call you. Animals don't have last names. How do you do that? How do you, the man who would impregnate women on the next plantation, there were times when their penis or their scrotum was cut off to stop it. How do you do that? Where does it come from? And yet, we rise. We're just like the phoenix. When you think that we're gone, we show up. And when we show up, we say, Black Panther, watch it. This is who we are. That's the first movie that I ever seen in my entire life that I can look at and say, without any reservation, that's who we are. That's who we are. That's who we have always been. Anything different, we have made every effort to become just like the enslaver. It did not work because our essence never changed. That's who we are. Why are we excited about this? Why we see so much in it? Why is it that people are going to see it 3, 4, 5 times? Because that's our essence. We are drawn to that. That's who we are. The Creator put this story, this reality in the heart of writers and in the heart of the director and producers. And this is not the end product, but the beginning product that reminds us of who we are. It shows us what's in our DNA. And this is the reason we are the most forgiven people on earth, because we have seen a mirror that shows us that's who we are. We do not want to be a part of the chaos and the brutality, because that's not who we are. Look at the villain. That was not who he was. That was him taking on the brutality of the oppressor. And at the end, when he said, his father said he should see Africa because how pretty it was, Wakanda, as pretty because it's so pretty, and he saw it. And once he saw it, he saw himself and said, I would rather die. What is he saying? It's okay now for me to die. I know who I am. And guess what? Sometimes it comes at that point too late. Here we are.
But it's really too late. It's just
another step.
Yeah.
I have a question. The vibranium that permeated through Wakanda. Is that not the vibranium that permeated through Wakanda? Is that not representative of our spiritual selves? Is that what what that signified?
Our spiritual essence.
Okay.
Because vibranium could do anything. It could heal.
It can
It
protect
could
you.
do anything. All that's saying is the thing that can help you can also be destructive in the wrong hands. And that's what we have been experiencing all of these years. All of the ways that it can be used for destruction.
So when you talked about the ugliness of our world, or this world, then that was the misuse. That is the misuse of our spiritual
Absolutely.
essence.
Absolutely. Yeah. The misuse of the spiritual essence, not just ours, but the misuse of the spiritual essence, that depicts free will. You can do what you want to do with it. That's up to you. All the stuff that you've learned, all the ways that you have been shown how to speak to, connect with, however you want to term it, the universe, the creator, you can walk away from here now and never come back again. You will still have those things with you, and you still be able to do those things, but you will never grow beyond it. And I speak that because I know it. The people who have been through this place and Greater New Faith, when I see them, they were at the same place they were when they left. Why? This is the journey. And they got off the pathway. And when you get off the pathway, you can't go any further till you get back on it. I have seen it time and time again. I did a funeral a few weeks ago, and still trying to figure out why I couldn't breathe there during that period. This person was on program to bring the eulogy, but it was a mistake. And when I saw it, the people were apologizing to me for the mistake. And when I sat down, she says to me, I'm supposed to bring the eulogy, but I guess they go change. I said, no, it's already changed. It was never supposed to be. She got up to do remarks. And when she completed her remarks, after the funeral, everyone in African Greater Faith came to me and said, that sounds like us 10 years ago. She had been with us, and she left because she thought that she could start her own church. It didn't work out, but guess what? The words that she spoke was the last thing that she learned. That's what I'm saying. You can leave, and you know me. I have never been one of those people who say, please don't go. I might say it to my woman, like, baby, please don't go. But I don't be saying it. I don't be saying it to people who sit under the teaching. If I don't see you, I'll call, make sure everything's okay. If everything's okay, we don't. But that's not why. Because I do not have the right to come up on the bank and pull you back to the pathway. I don't have that right. This is totally voluntary. If I walk in and nobody is here, I go home. I'm not upset with anyone. Whether there's 2 people here, 0 people, I'm not upset with anyone. It hurts because I know what's available. And that's it. That's it. Okay. I said this once, I don't know, maybe twice. There's not any, if there are no more questions or comments, I'm done.
All hearts and minds.
I have a comment. Y'all gonna put a spoiler alert on this one, right? When you post it. Excuse me, Mommy.
No. Because I believe that the richness of the discussion makes people curious about what we're talking about. and they would be better off than we were when they go.
Yeah.
Because they have some type of insight, and we were looking for a storyline with a plot, and at the same time picking up stuff. But they can watch it. They can watch it the way we're going to watch it the next time we go.
Well, fortunately, I got to see it yesterday. But the only thing I wanted to talk about, y'all might have talked about it, we've been busy getting ready to go this morning, is how the villain in this movie really wasn't a villain in the classical sense of what you think of. And his redemption at the end, you kind of did talk about that. But I thought that was very curious, that the antithesis to the hero was not really embodied in one person per se. It was the people's own failings that became embodied in that one person. And it was, you know, it wasn't just good against bad outside, you know, good. One people are all good, one people are all bad. It was the good and the bad in one people that had to play out. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, and you're right. It wasn't just the king, it was the people. And that's the word I'll be trying to say, antithesis. That word? And that. I like that word, but it won't come out my mouth right. But anyway, is that it? Antithesis.
I just have
Yeah, that's it
popcorn
from
when I
me.
go.
Okay, huh?
I just make sure I get popcorn at the next movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
At the next setting.
at the next setting.
Yeah. If I had thought about it, I would have bought you some. Okay, we're done. Have a good evening.
Oh, no.
And I wouldn't charge
All
you.
right, have a good evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
And,
Bye.
I wouldn't charge you $10.50 for the